I hope that this video series has given you some practical tips for how to adopt inquiry approaches into your teaching. I personally was very reticent to use inquiry approaches, especially with my advanced class at first, for many of the reasons that we talked about in the previous segment. It was actually a serendipitous event that I came to change my mind. One day in my advanced class, I had completely forgotten to run off the copies for the lab procedure that I was going to use that day. And so rather than waste the class period or trying to move on to the next topic, I just presented the challenge to the class and started asking them, what would we have to do to answer this question? It was to determine how much energy ice absorbs when it melts into a liquid. I then had the class just suggest ways we could measure that value. So we had already covered the basic ideas of calorimetry. Kids knew Q equals MC delta T and how to use that equation. And so we just talked through the data that we might need to collect. And all I had to do was set boundaries on how much material to use so they didn't overfill the calorimeter, and sort of set what final temperature were we going to go to stop the experiment. And then students went back to the lab and they conducted the lab with ease. They didn't ask any questions about the procedure. They got through it just fine. The previous year that I did this experiment, I had a very detailed procedure. It's actually 2 pages. And students got so caught up in completing the procedure that they kind of forgot why they were even doing the lab in the first place. So at the end of that class period where I had them make their own experiment, I actually sat there astonished that they almost figured out every single step on their own. And then I wondered to myself, where else in my course had I completely underestimated the ability of my students? I would encourage you to try incorporating more inquiry techniques throughout your classroom, though. Use questioning techniques when you do demonstrations. Use simulations to build mental models and to structure questions to guide students' thinking in a way that will help them make very logical conclusions. When you work through problems in class, be sure to verbalize your thought processes so students can see and hear how you arrive at logical conclusions. When you do inquiry experiments, set your students up for success by giving them a skill set and then a new challenge or a more interesting question that they can answer with the skills that they built in the previous experiment. The ultimate goal of inquiry methods is to get students to think independently and come to meaningful conclusions on their own. In today's job market, when I talk to my friends who work in human resources and employing people, they're looking for people who can think through and solve problems for themselves without needing to be mentored through every single step of the process. We owe it to our students to train them to be independent thinkers. I hope that you have found this video series useful, and I hope that you and your students will benefit from incorporating more inquiry into your class. Thanks for watching.